Since Halo Infinite has come out, we've spent a lot of time already discussing the implications of the story. However, I think the thing most hardcore fans have really attached themselves to is the idea of the Endless. And specifically, could the Endless be the most ancient and powerful race in the Halo universe, the Precursors? Well, that's what we'll be discussing today. Today's video is brought to you by one of my favorite services, Audible. Audible is your home for spoken word entertainment, from podcasts and audiobooks to guided meditation and more. If you're an Audible member, every month you'll get 1 credit, which you can exchange for any title in their premium library. Don't feel like reading that month? Your credits roll over and you get to save them. I personally love audiobooks. They're actually one of my favorite ways to consume media. You can see based on my app time here that I've listened to a lot of audiobooks, and I'd highly recommend that you check the service out, especially if you like Star Wars novels. My recommendation, go for unabridged books. If you've never read or listened to the Star Wars Expanded Universe, I recommend you start with Heir to the Empire. Right now, because it's the holiday season, you can save 60% on your first 3 months of Audible. That's only $5.95 a month. Give yourself the gift of listening by going to audible.com/EckhartSlatter. Again, that's 1 Audible credit every month, and if you decide you don't like the service, you get to keep the audiobooks anyway. Thanks to Audible for sponsoring today's video. On with the content. So let's start with a bit of detail about who the Precursors were and why they're important to the Halo story. The Precursors were an extraordinarily powerful and advanced race which had transcended the ordinary limits of technology. They not only seeded life throughout galaxies, but also believed in the mantle, the idea that one species should hold the role of guardian over all life in a galaxy. This would end up leading to some conflict. In our galaxy, the Milky Way, the Precursors decided that ancient humans should inherit the mantle, something that Forerunners were, well, not very fond of. The Forerunners were even less stoked when they found out that the Precursors intended to wipe them out, and ended up, in fury, attacking their creators, nearly wiping them out. At least that's what the histories say. The truth of all of this is a bit unclear, and the Forerunners definitely believed that everything they did was for a righteous purpose. Either way, not all Precursors were destroyed, and some eventually turned into the dust that would form the basis of the Flood. Even after their disappearance, the Precursors left evidence of their presence throughout the galaxy. Most famously was the Domain. Precursor technology and creations were based largely on neural physics, and the Domain itself was a store of information and knowledge which could be accessed throughout the galaxy. The firing of the Halo Ray obliterated technology based on neural physics, and thus for a long time the Domain was actually inaccessible. Another impressive Precursor technology was the interdimensional star roads, which connected planets or solar systems through different dimensions. The star roads of the Milky Way galaxy were also destroyed by the firing of the Halo Ray, given that they were based on neural physics. And yeah, that's a basic summary of the Precursors and their creations. At least that's the established lore. I do have some speculation as well. We know that the Precursors come from outside the Milky Way galaxy. We also know they seeded almost all, if not all, life within the galaxy, and it's my belief that they still exist throughout the universe. It's my belief that the entirety of the prehistoric Halo lore was a test by the Precursors, which the Forerunners themselves probably failed. Aside from them choosing humanity to inherit the mantle, whether that was true or not, the Forerunners reacted in definitely the wrong way, and also failed to protect the galaxy against the Flood without having to rely on the incredible power and destructive capabilities of the Halo Ray. Alright, so that's the summary of the Precursors. Obviously, that's not everything, but it's a good general overview. Let's now talk about the Endless. So we learn at the end of Halo Infinite, although I guess there are hints throughout, that the Harbinger, the main bad guy who you've seen in the distance throughout the games, is actually a member of the Endless herself. Some people felt like this was obvious. I thought the opposite. My main sort of question is, why does Harbinger have a different symbol on her Silex compared to the Endless that we see at the end of the game? But who knows. Now, there are elements of the Endless that definitely scream Precursor, and the main thing would definitely be their name. The Precursors have a sort of transcendent quality to them. They've surpassed nature and taken on this new higher form. The Primordial, a member of the Precursors, is even known as the Timeless One. The Precursors also had some time manipulation abilities, and we know that that might be something the Endless have available to them as well. I think those are the most obvious comparisons, plus the fact that Halo already has several hyper advanced species, so you'd assume that if a new one is being entered at this point, that they're one of the existing ones, especially where the precursors have long been a sort of presence in the galaxy and in the lore, but have never really played into the video games, at least until this point, and they're sort of seen too as an enemy of the Forerunners. That being said, although it's an easy connection to make and maybe a logical one as well, I still think when you look at the overall information and evidence that it's clear the precursors and the Endless are separate. First of all, we actually get a specific species name for the Endless. This is in the audio logs. They're referred to as the Zalanin. And when talking about scope, the Zalanin are definitely not on the same technological level of the precursors, and what's more, the monitor of Zeta Halo thinks these are a new uncatalogued species. Now, it's definitely possible that she didn't have information to the Forerunners' records on the precursors. Maybe those had all been wiped out by this point, but I don't necessarily think that's likely given the fact that even recently in the Forerunner Flood War, Star Roads had been a weapon employed against the Forerunners. No, I think the Zalanin are somewhat different. They have a pretty defined physical structure, at least if we go off the Harbinger, and it does seem like they are largely relegated to one world. After the monitor discovers that the Zalanin exist, Zeta Halo is moved to that world. There's a meeting between offensive bias and representatives of the Zalanin, I'm going to guess the Harbinger, and the Zalanin/Endless are locked away for some reason. Why is that? Well, I'll talk about that in just a minute, but that doesn't really seem like something that would even be possible with the precursors. I also don't think that if the precursors allowed themselves to be locked away, that there would be a Harbinger-like creature so eager to release them. For one, I believe there are still existing precursors outside the galaxy, and two, I don't believe that they would allow themselves to be locked away in a position where they don't have the power to escape unless they're happy to be in there. One last note on biology as well, I don't think the Zalanin appearance really matches what we've heard of precursors in the past. This brings us to the topic of why. We know that the Forerunners had, well, issues with the precursors, so if these weren't remaining precursors, why were they locked away? Well, we've talked about this in a prior video, and I think there's one of two obvious guesses. We know that the Forerunners were trying to hide any evidence that would harm their greatest achievement, which is the protection of the galaxy. It's possible the Endless were locked away so that they couldn't tell future races the horrors that the Forerunners had inflicted upon the galaxy through the firing of the ray to preserve natural life, or because the Forerunners didn't want them to get too powerful while there was an obvious power vacuum, or it could be because, as some have speculated, given the fact that the Endless survived the Halo rings, if they were consumed by the Flood, the parasite could acquire that power, whether that was some biological immunity to the Halo rings, which doesn't seem like something the precursors would have given what happened to their neural physics, or the ability to manipulate time, as others have suggested, that would undo the firing of the rings because it would make the Flood basically unkillable in the future. So are the Endless precursors? No, I don't think so. There's definitely some surface similarity, certainly in name and the fact that they do seem to be another ancient powerful race, but I think overall the information that we have suggests that they are probably something else at the end of the day. That's just my theory though. What do you think? Let me know all of that and more down below. Till next time guys, have a good one, be safe, and may the Force be with you.